Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the daily chart of gold provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. Now you can see the volume here. This is the big battle. We've got the trend line drawn in here. Goes back to, well, it goes back to 2012. The big trend line, of course, is going to go back to the 1900 top. You can see we've got a long way to run to get back to that downtrend line. But this downtrend line, we have a big battle here going on in the paper. And again, that's just paper gold contracts, but I suspect that a large percentage of those gold contracts are Eastern parties who are interested in taking delivery of the physical metal. We know that an enormous amount of physical gold has been flowing to the east. It's been being recast into kilo bars and sent through Hong Kong into China. I think the latest figure I heard was something like 2,200 metric tons or something like that for one of the years. I think the mining supply is only around 2,900 or something. It's a ridiculous number. It would not surprise me to see numbers coming in for, say, 2013, 2014, that China is actually importing all of the gold that's mined in the world every single year. That wouldn't surprise me a bit. So what does this mean? Well, it just means that the West is continuing to fight a hopeless battle of suppressing the price of gold, and that gold is going east. Now, one of the ways they're doing that, of course, is through currency manipulation. Their partners in crime, we'll say, are the Europeans. They've been depressing their currency. Not that they really need to try that hard because their economies are in shambles. We have the Japanese, who are printing money like crazy, trying to make the dollar look better. So you can see this insane volume here on the yen. And that's been going on since late 2012, actually since the election, American election in 2012 with Obama being reelected. And you can see the Japanese just destroying their currency. We're talking a move from 78 to 108. So the Japanese devaluing their currency by 20-25%, something like that. We know the Swiss are on board with the Euro program, and pretty much since late 2000, actually August of 2011, when the Swiss came out and announced that they were pegging their currency to the euro, they pretty much agreed to go down with that ship. So as I've been pointing out for the longest time, we've got the Western powers, and that's going to include the U.S., the Anglo-American Empire. That's going to be Britain and America, and then the Five Eyes, the other British, we'll call them provinces of Canada, Australia, New Zealand. These are all on board. They're all part of the Western powers. We've got Japan, and they are now squaring up against the East, which is Russia and China and India. Latest news we've had is that India now is signing on to a new IMF and World Bank. This is very important because, as I pointed out many times before, one of the things that the West has, primarily the Anglo-American Empire, the Americans and the British have, is mind control. And they use their mind control to stage world crises, to control events and news cycles and everything. And we're seeing the East and Russia opt out of this thing. Now that's very important because the history of the IMF and the World Bank and all these things, these actually go back to the time around Bretton Woods and when the U.S. was set up after World War II as the world power, because so much destruction had been wrought around the rest of the world, and so much of the gold and silver had flowed to the United States that the United States was able to set itself up as the de facto power of the world. So they created these international organizations, the IMF, the World Bank, the UN, and these organizations purported to be representatives of the entire world. And of course, all the countries join them and stuff like that. But what we're seeing now coming from the East, and it's not surprising at all, and you have to look at the numbers in the population. If you add up the population of China and the rest of South Asia, excluding Japan, and then throw in India and throw in Russia and throw in a few others, we're talking probably half the world's population. So if they're going to bolt from this U.S. English-led, European-led type of world system, basically they're calling their bluff. And my money is on the East. My money is on the fact that they're going to call their bluff, and the main reason is because they're broke. The IMF is broke, the World Bank is broke, the UN is broke. If the countries that now have the money, and that's going to be China and the rest of Southeast Asia and some of the BRICS nations, if these nations begin to take their monies that they were giving to these world organizations, the UN, the IMF, and start giving them to their own organizations, world organizations, then obviously there isn't going to be any money to fund these organizations, and the jig is going to be up. So let's get over to some of the stories I wanted to look at here. The first story is from Zero Hedge, and this is just a shocking story, but we've seen this coming for a long time. This is the IRS, and now they just want the money. The IRS can now seize accounts on suspicion alone. How can this happen? Ms. Hinders said in a recent interview, "Who takes your money before they prove you've done anything wrong?" Well, you know who does? The U.S. government. The federal government does. The topic of civil asset forfeiture has been high on our agenda recently as federal agents discover how to steal Americans' hard-earned cash with zero repercussions and decide unilaterally how much cash a common man is allowed to carry. But as the New York Times reports, the escalation to the IRS brings a whole new world of possibilities with regard to asset confiscation based on no actual crime being proved. As the New York Times reports, for almost 40 years, Carol Hinders has dished out Mexican specialties at her modest cash-only restaurant. For just as long, she has deposited the earnings at a small bank branch a block away, until last year when two tax agents knocked on her door and informed her that they had seized her checking account of almost $33,000. The Internal Revenue Service agents did not accuse Ms. Hinders of money laundering or cheating on her taxes. In fact, she has not been charged with any crime. Remember what the Constitution says? That before you're deprived of life, liberty, or property, they have to follow due process of law. Well, that's gone. Instead, the money was seized solely because she had deposited less than $10,000 at a time, which they viewed as an attempt to avoid triggering a required government report. Her money was seized under an increasingly controversial area of law known as civil asset forfeiture, which allows law enforcement agents to take property they suspect of being tied to crime, even if no criminal charges are filed. Law enforcement agencies get to keep a share of whatever is forfeited. Critics say this incentive has led to the creation of a law enforcement dragnet with more than 100 multi-agency task forces combing through bank reports looking for bank accounts to seize. Using a law designed to catch drug traffickers, racketeers, and terrorists, well, they don't seem to catch too many of those, do they? Because, as I pointed out in the past, we're going to stop here because it's too long, but I just want to comment on this. Was it HSBC that was convicted of trafficking billions of dollars? They paid a fine. The UN, I pointed out many times before, the UN has pointed out that the international drug trade is $1 trillion trade. Where's that money going? How's it being laundered? Well, of course, it's the big Wall Street banks. But they're never caught in this dragnet. No, it's the little lady who runs a Mexican restaurant, and she's caught in the dragnet. So there is proof, as what I pointed out for the longest time that if you have your money in their system, they're going to take it. Now, I've said that about stocks, that stocks are only something you should do with play money. In other words, you should have your preps and your food and your water and all that stuff paid for, probably your house paid off and your car paid off and everything else. Then you should have maybe some gold and some silver and some cash, and then what other investments you might be interested in, say whether that's real estate or some types of collectibles or something like that. Then after that, you should think about using some play money in either futures or stock accounts. This is gambling money. Well, the same thing applies for bank accounts. The only money you should have in bank accounts is money that you're willing to lose, because whether it's going to be bail-ins, whether it's going to be bankruptcies, whether it's going to be IRS seizures, whether it's going to be gigantic terrorist events and shutdowns of the banks, it's pretty clear, they're making it very clear that the only money you should have in a bank is money that you expect to lose. Now, let's go over and take a look at the latest Hillary statement here. This is from Breitbart. And Hillary, I'm not sure who her advisors are or if she even has any advisors. She's pretty much gone off the deep end here. And I don't know if she intends to run for the presidency in 2016. If you look at some of the TV shows with women presidents and things like that, maybe the Hollywood Illuminati are trying to pump that meme. But clearly Hillary didn't have very good advice. Hillary, don't let anybody tell you that businesses create jobs. That's right. She actually said that. She came out and said that, here it is, appearing at a Boston rally for Democrat gubernatorial candidate Martha Coakley on Friday, Hillary Clinton told the crowd gathered at the Park Plaza Hotel not to listen to anybody who says that businesses create jobs. Now, the larger quote is here, and we can go into the details, but she really said it. She's really that crazy. She's really that out of touch. And so I think she pretty much sunk her. Barring some huge crash that swings the country even further to the left, it seems to me she's completely torpedoed her presidential run here. But let's look over here at Snopes, because this is interesting to see how they're trying to spin this very quickly. And you know Snopes, I covered Snopes before. This is basically, they try to pretend like there's some type of neutral Wikipedia encyclopedia. Actually, what they are, or how they began, was a group to debunk urban legends, you can see here. But what they have become is basically a hard left political mouthpiece. So, and they've been caught many times. I'm not going to document it here. They've been caught in false statements, untruths, covering up the truth. They're perpetual liars. They're just left-wing mouthpieces, much like Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not as bad as Snopes, but Snopes is a hard left mouthpiece. And what's so interesting here is to look at the discussion board. And of course, this started a panic on Snopes because the right-wing media was covering this gigantic faux pas by Hillary. And you can see here, let's look at the conversation. I found this in my inbox this morning. Hillary, businesses does not create jobs, Washington does. Submitted by Tyler Durden. So there's a Zero Hedge post. And the person says, the story links to a Zero Hedge page which does contain both quotes, but claims them to be from different occasions. The plausibility of Clinton's actually meaning that aside, it seems to me that she's way too good of a politician to say any such thing in public. See that? That implies she'd say it in private because that's what they really believe, but she'd be more careful and not say that in public. But I know the person who sent it to me, and just sending that back to him is unlikely to be convincing. I searched on the main Snopes page and on the boards and can't find this. Can anybody help me out with it? Wonder Woman comes in. The page you link contains a link to the Breitbart page with a video. The video is clipped to eliminate any additional context to her statement. But for what it's worth, she did appear to say that corporations do not create jobs. I don't see a link with a video to the above quote. Breitbart, shudder. Now I have to go take a shower. So there's your leftists. These people, they're lunatics. They're insane. And then they're quoting American Spectator. Here's a link here with all the media that covered it, including the Huffington Post. Of course, this is just the start of a long list of news agencies that say she did say, don't let anybody tell you it's corporations and businesses that create jobs. The biggest problem is sorting out in what context she was using the quote. Thanks, everybody. She did say at least part of it. I watched the video in the Huffington Post link, as I think they're unlikely to have misedited on purpose to make it sound worse. Oh, okay, so we can trust the Huffington Post. And the part she may not have said seems unprovable one way or the other. So a nice, clear debunking ain't gonna happen. You see that? Debunking. So these are the people on the left. They are constantly trying to cover up the truth. If they can't cover it up, they're going to try to spin it. But it's very, very clear. Hillary Clinton is a hardcore Marxist, leftist, and actually she's a lunatic. That she could say something like that, and that is just the most insane statement that somebody could make. And as Tyler Durden pointed out, the conclusion is, well, then it means that government creates jobs. And if you're living in a country where the government is the only ones that create the jobs, then you're living in a communist dictatorship. And you're living in a place that you don't want to live in very much longer. Now, I believe that Martin Armstrong was the first one that posted that. And he said that if Hillary's elected president, he's leaving the country. It's probably a little late at this point. They probably just put an IRS tax lien against him and then he can't leave. But so now we have the IRS here coming in and seizing bank accounts. I told you for the longest time that you can't have your money in their system. You can have play money in their system. And as someone pointed out here, I don't know if it's true or not. In one of the comments, someone pointed out that you can make a deposit, a cash deposit to a credit card. And because it goes in as a debit or as a credit, I'm not sure which, but apparently that's not reportable. It doesn't really matter. It's beyond the pale now. They're just to the point now where they're just taking money. So you really need to have as little money as you possibly can have in their system. And that means that you want to have it in physical gold, physical silver, Bitcoin, collectibles, maybe even real estate, but you certainly don't want to have your money in their bank accounts. And I would say that also includes their safe deposit boxes, because I can guarantee you when they do have a banking crisis and they shut down those banks, they're going to shut down those safe deposit boxes as well. So if your money is in a bank, you're gambling with the money. And we'll talk to you next time.